Hello and welcome to another video, and today we finally got our confirmation of when this Xbox event is going to take place. And with that, and the reason I want to make a video is what I predicted. If you haven't listened to the latest episode of the podcast, I highly encourage you to, but kind of what I talked about there and what I predicted, it seems like it's coming true, which is this isn't the big deal that everybody has made this out to be. And I think that's the important takeaway here. But let's go ahead and go through the article here, and then we will go ahead and discuss. So the article here in question, I'm taking this right from IGN.com. Xbox A Vision for the Future, set for Thursday with Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty. It's a special edition of their official Xbox podcast, where they're going to cover the future of Xbox first-party releases. And that's one thing that's important to note. Xbox first-party releases. Xbox will reveal its vision for the future in a special edition of the official Xbox podcast set to release on Thursday, February 15th at 12 p.m. Pacific. That's 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. The official announcement reads, please join us for a special edition of the official Xbox podcast. Hear from Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty as they share updates on the Xbox business. The podcast is expected to address questions about Xbox first-party releases, including Starfield, Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, and Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which have been rumored to be heading to PlayStation and other platforms soon. Spencer reportedly reassured employees that Microsoft plans to continue making consoles amid questions surrounding Xbox third-party strategy going forward. Reports that Xbox plans to release first-party exclusives on platforms such as PlayStation have had the community in a frenzy for at least a month now. In January, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said that the company can be a good publisher on Sony and Nintendo and PCs and Xbox. We love gaming. In fact, Flight Simulator was created before even Windows, but we were number 3, number 4. And now with Activision, I think we have a chance of being a good publisher, quite frankly, on Sony and Nintendo and PCs and Xbox. We're excited about that acquisition closing, and I'm glad we've gotten through it. And then obviously they linked to Ryan McCaffrey's article from last week, blah, blah, blah. The comments are in this article are, as expected, complete garbage. So what does this mean? You know, you look at this and you go, okay, so after all of this scuttle, after hearing all this doom and gloom and everything from Microsoft's pulling out of the industry completely to, franchises like Halo, Gears, and Forza are going to come over to PlayStation, we now have a confirmation of when they're going to talk about this and address it, and it's on a podcast. And that's the first thing I want to point out here. This isn't, when you say business meeting, this isn't like a Microsoft earnings call. This isn't, an E3 like event. This is literally going to be handled on a podcast, which tells me that everything that we've heard so far, this is not the big deal that people have made this out to be. Now, does that mean we're going to see a lot of games going forward probably hit other platforms like PlayStation and Nintendo platforms? Absolutely. That's kind of been a prediction for a while, and it started way back with Blade in December at the Game Awards when they would not commit to that being an exclusive first-party game. And I think this is the future strategy going forward. I think unless it's a pre-existing franchise like Halo, Gears, or Forza, it's probably going to be on a third-party platform. I also think we are way too soon to see Game Pass as an application on other consoles. And I don't think that that's going to happen until I don't even think it'll happen the next console generation. I think it's going to be a while. Remember, after all, Microsoft signed those 10-year deals for Call of Duty exclusivity to be, instead everywhere. So, but I think you're going to see a lot of games journalists eat crow this week, because so many of these journalists were putting all their eggs in the basket that Microsoft is pulling out of the industry. And as I've said before, and I continue to say, nothing is further from the truth there. It's literally going to be, hey, this is what we're doing with first party games going forward. This is what the decisions we're making. We're not ending consoles. We're not going to stop making consoles. They're just basically putting their games in other places. And a lot of the Activision stuff, I would honestly say that most of the Activision stuff that was just acquired is probably going to be third party. What I do think is going to happen is that you're going to see a lot of timed exclusivity, because again, at the end of the day, they want people people in their ecosystem on their platform. And to do that, you have to have some sort of hook there. Now, coming out and saying, hey guys, guess what? You want to play Indiana Jones day one when it relaunches in, let's say, December of 2024. You can if you have Game Pass. Otherwise, it will come to other platforms at a later time. And I think for a big game like Indiana Jones, that's probably at least 6 months to a year exclusivity on Game Pass. Whereas I think you're going to see that vary between what kind of games we're talking about here. But I think bigger games like that, you're going to see a year. I do also believe the rumors that Starfield is coming to PlayStation. It makes perfect sense. Like Starfield, well, again, I enjoyed the game. I think the game's very good. And I do think it was a success. It was not the success that Microsoft wanted it to be, like an Elder Scrolls or a Fallout. And because of that, why not put it on PlayStation, right? You can make a lot more money by having it on that platform. And I think you're going to see the announcement of a Game of the Year version that comes complete with all the patches and whatever the content is that they're making for that game for the DLC. And I think that'll be out like September or October of this year, around the 1 year mark. It makes sense. But I think going forward, again, you're going to see a lot of less exclusives from Microsoft, unless it's Gears, unless it's Halo, unless it's Forza. I would also even throw Fable into that one. I really don't see something that's first party like Fable coming over to other platforms. I could be wrong, but that one I really feel like probably not. Sea of Thieves, again, that's a 6-year-old live service game, and if you want to boost numbers on that when it's kind of stagnant everywhere else, yeah, put it on PlayStation. But again, I digress, and I go back to the fact that I think a lot of the media and the games journalists are going to eat a lot of crow come Friday or Thursday afternoon, because they blew this way out of proportion when it's really not the big deal that they made it out to be. And it goes back to something that I've talked about for a while on my channel, which is the industry has this insane bias against Microsoft and against Xbox. Now, again, I'm not making any excuses here. Microsoft's messaging around Xbox has been complete shit since 2013. It's been complete shit. You know, even after the Don Matrick era, we got Phil Spencer. For all the good things that Phil Spencer has done for Xbox, and he's done a lot of good things, messaging is not one of them. Like he even falls back and says things that he probably shouldn't say, and then, you know, you have people question it later and he'll apologize, say, yeah, maybe I said that out of context or something. But the messaging has never been good. And I think on Thursday, when they have this podcast, they need to come out and be crystal clear. This is what exclusive means to us. This is what timed exclusive means to us. And this is our plans for exclusivity going forward. And I think that is the most important thing that you need to communicate to fans and consumers of the Xbox ecosystem. Is you need to tell them that, hey, you still have their back, but some of these games are going to show up on other platforms. We've known it's going to go that way for a while. I still do also predict that this is where they are going to announce that they are a digital only company going forward. We already know that they, through the 1900 layoffs that they just did, they did get rid of their physical media department for Xbox. And you've seen those screenshots going around from GameStop with all these physical Xbox games that got canceled and are no longer reservable. It really seems like they're going that route. So I wouldn't be surprised if this here they say, hey, we're phasing out physical media for the Xbox. It's going to be all digital by the end of the year. We know that refresh of the Xbox Series X system, which will be out, you know, if the leak is true, September-ish, is a digital only system. It's literally the same system, just no disk drive and a better network card, which makes sense. And again, at this point, like, as much as someone who loves physical games, loves collecting physical games, I understand the writing has been on the wall for that for a long, long time. And I made the decision earlier this year. I said it in the other videos I put up in this like series of videos, that I made the decision at the beginning of the year to just be all digital on the Xbox, because there's no point. Like, we're going to now get to a point where the next console is going to come out that I want to get, and I won't be able to put a disc in it. So why am I still buying these new games physically for this system if I want to play it there. PlayStation, we have no idea what their plan is specifically, but if I were to guess and make a bet, I would say they're going to do the same thing, but they will not talk about it until they announce the PS6. I think if they do have the rumored PS5 Pro for this year, it's going to follow the same suit as the slim PS5, which is, hey, there's a disc and a discless version, and then they have the ability for you to buy an optical drive if you buy the discless version and want to do that later on. I think that will be something they continue to do for at least this generation, which sucks because like there, I've kind of made the decision of like, okay, if it's something I want to own physically, I'll get it on PS5 because again, the future there is uncertain. Whereas like it really seems writing's on the wall for Microsoft and for Xbox, but again, we'll see. But I expect they will address that on this podcast as well. Podcast format makes sense. You know, this is all a pre-recorded thing, so they don't have to filter through and answer a bunch of questions. And like doing a live podcast, like going on someone else's podcast, again, they would have to filter questions, and they don't want to do that. But again, the point here is they need to be precise. They need to be crystal clear with what their plans are, and they need to communicate that extremely well. And I don't know if Microsoft can do that at this point. We'll see. The last thing I'll mention here, I had somebody write in for the most recent episode of Podcast 572, and I want to address it here as well. I addressed it on the podcast, but asking specifically for me personally, is it going to affect how I cover games on the channel, what I do with my content, being whatever Microsoft is doing? And the answer is no. Like, if for some reason we hit DEF CON 5 and you know, they were backing out of the console space and they were going to shut everything down, I mean, yeah, the answer would be I would have to switch to being a 100% PlayStation user. It is what it is, but that's not going to be the case. And it really honestly doesn't affect how I play games, because the answer that I like to give, I think Dan put it pretty eloquently on the podcast, which is I don't play systems, I play games. And I'm the same way. Like, I play games specifically where I want to play them, and we're coming up to a period here with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Dragon's Dogma, Stellar Blade. These are all games that I want to play on the PlayStation, so we're gonna have a big chunk here starting the end of February where the games that I'm covering are all going to be PS5, and it is what it is. So that's kind of how I always roll with the punches on the channel. So the long end of it is it doesn't affect how I'm going to cover games going forward, and I'm also going to continue doing the early impressions, not really doing reviews anymore unless I really feel like I have a lot to say. Like, case in point, last year, Alan Wake 2, I had a shit ton to say about that game. So but we'll continue that, and at some point here I will have some impressions of Infinite Wealth if I can pull myself away from it long enough to give those impressions. So but you can also hear impressions I've had of it ongoing on Podcast 572, which we just put the latest episode up on the channel. Highly encourage you to go listen to that if you haven't yet, or you can listen to it on all the podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, you can get it. Other than that, as always, remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And until next time.